The brand will come to us and say, I want to make a game for gamers. And that's such a broad statement, especially when 3 billion people are playing games. It almost feels like that meme where they're like, I want to make a game for gamers. I'm like, really? And it's like, I actually want to sell my product to Gen Z, like females. We're like, okay, we can start here now. Like, let's get to your actual problem that you're trying to solve.
Welcome to Brands in Play, the podcast where we explore immersive marketing and the people who are leading it. I'm Nick Hill, co-founder and chief innovation officer at Sawhorse.
And I'm Prioux, insights and partnership director at Geek.
This week on the show, taxes in virtual worlds, Roblox is giving out $1 million, and how Hollywood should be thinking about gaming and the future of immersive storytelling.
And for that, we're going to be chatting to Gianna Valintina, Global Head of Strategic Partnership at Spatial, where we hear about her vision for the platform and how brands should think about it.
Let's get into it.
Let's go.
Albane, what's up? How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? I'm joining you from a very different background today. I'm at my grandparents in the French countryside, so I'm really loving makes me feel smart to be surrounded by so many books and encyclopedia.
That's definitely a flex to have all book background.
I feel like for once I am competing against your background, which I've had so much envy for, and at least now I have something like quite interesting behind me.
Well, that's what we'd say. The show gets better every single week.
Absolutely. We're getting better. We're just getting better.
What's going on this week with you?
For me, I mean, I've been traveling a lot, so I've been more into my books this week. Less events compared to last week, but I've really been, I've been meaning to really finish the metaverse, building the spatial internet. If you don't know him, I really recommend, and I think we should put his website on the show note because his website has so many really interesting insights, and I've been meaning to read his book for a really long time. So halfway there, so I'm hoping that in one episode I can give a bit of my final take on it. But what have you been up to? Tell me about any other exciting events. I know there's a lot happening at the moment with South by Southwest and GDC, so tell me all about it.
Yeah, so this week, didn't go anywhere yet, but tomorrow morning to South by to speak on a panel with Charles from the Geek team.
Yep.
And I think Megan and Connor from your side are going to be out there as well.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, South by Southwest, in my opinion, is the best conference. It feels more like a music festival and kind of a festival of culture and technology than a conference. But yeah, I went for the first time last year, and I'm super excited to get back this year.
Is there any conference that you're going to be able to attend? Because I feel like it's always the way, like you go there to attend those panels and you don't have time to join any. Is there one in particular that you want to join?
I actually really want to see the live recording of Pivot, which is one of my favorite podcasts. So they're doing that live. That should be interesting.
I hope you have time because I know how busy and crazy those events can be. So I really hope you have time for it.
Thanks. I think I'll be there for like a little less than 48 hours. So we'll see.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a blur. Should we jump to the news?
Let's go. Yeah, to the news.
To the news.
So first piece of news on my side is the hunt is back on Roblox. So the countdown has really started. It will start on the 13th of March, but this time there is a massive prize pool. Is that how you call it? Prize at the end for the winner, which is $1 million, which is, I think, absolutely insane. So for those that you don't know, The Hunt is an official event that's organized by Roblox, assuming it will follow a very similar format from all of the little information that they shared so far. But essentially, it's a partnership with really different experiences. Each developer has within their experiences challenges and things that essentially players have to do. We don't know what it is so far. We don't know who are the experiences that are involved within this challenge. But people that are going to win essentially by like the fastest will be able to compete and have the chance of winning this pool prize. I think I was really excited last year, even more this year, because I feel like they've really chosen two strategies. Like one, it's obviously really exciting for the developers. I think last year brands were also involved in there. So it brings huge traffic because obviously like there is a lot of appetite. But I think also for the price, I'm just anticipating that people outside of Roblox are also going to change. So potentially reaching a larger audience than just the Roblox audience. And actually, I've seen that they've collaborated with some of their key influencers on YouTube to be able to release short filters. So really pushing the world out just outside Roblox that this is happening in what I see is a way to acquire a broader audience as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think, once you got $1 million on the line, that's super attractive to a lot of people, a lot of gamers.
I want to join.
Yeah, I'll compete myself. This reminds me of Ready Player One. And it's like that whole concept of, going across all these different virtual worlds to compete and kind of earn something. So it sounds like Roblox has kind of done their own version of that.
Absolutely. I think it's such an exciting event, and I'm sure it's starting very shortly. So the countdown has started, and I can't wait to see who are the experiences that are going to be part of it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be cool. And I would love to interview the person that wins. So if you're listening,
great.
let's
Okay,
have you on
let's
the
do
show.
that. If we can interview them, let's do that.
Yeah. Let's get a millionaire on this show.
Yeah.
My next story comes from Advertising Week. The title was Winning Beyond the Big Game, 3 Reasons to Extend Your Ad Strategy to Gaming. So this is in response to the Super Bowl that happened in the US. I'm not sure if you're a big fan.
I mean, I can't see it. The sad thing is that I know the Super Bowl because of the ads, but it kind of shows what you're talking about now.
Best parts were the ads. This article looks at how brands were advertising on the Super Bowl and how they should be going beyond that to engage with their audiences. The average cost of a commercial on the Super Bowl is $7 million.
That is insane.
And the audience size that it reaches during the game is 128 million viewers. So it's pretty big, but I think when you look at like a Roblox platform, they have 90 million daily active users.
I think it's because maybe in our world we're so used to such large audiences. I thought it was more.
Right. It's like we are used to these big numbers in these virtual spaces. So that was kind of interesting to me. And average cost being $7 million. That's a lot of money for 30 seconds. So brands were sending users beyond just the TV screen and into other places. So for instance, like Twix prompted viewers to participate in what they called their second screen stare down that was happening on their phones. And then Kia directed viewers to Instagram and TikTok to play for a chance to win a car.
Wow.
And so the article's thinking why not prompt users to jump into more immersive UGC gaming platforms like Roblox, Minecraft, and Fortnite in order to really engage and reach Gen Z. And then they said 3 reasons to do this. First, go from passive to active engagement with your audience. And then audience in general, meet them where they're at. A lot of the younger users might not even be watching the game. They might be in these spaces, so that's how you reach them.
Absolutely. And I think there was this recent report as well from Roblox on sport audiences inside Roblox. And I think the reality is that if you think about sport, and I'm sure it's the same in the US, it's something that's passed on probably from, your family, your dad watches something or your mom watches something, and the team that you support inside your household is kind of brought from generation to generation. But I think there is an opportunity for sport entities to now being discovered inside those virtual environments, because you're right, they might not discover your team or discover your sport through TV because that's just not where they are. So I think that transmedia actually strategy is quite smart, especially for the cost. If you're going to invest so much money into an ad spot, you need to also deploy other channels to be able to continue to engage with your audience beyond just those few seconds of engagement. So I think that's really smart, and hopefully they can also a little bit easier to measure bottom funnel. I think that's probably what they're trying to do here is how many people actually from that initial ad spot have they converted, because it's very difficult.
And you could definitely see a world where you got the dad. He's screaming at the TV screen, and you've got the couple younger kids hanging out on the couch with an iPad and a phone, but they're all kind of interacting and kind of engaging in that same game in just different ways. I think there's a lot of value there.
And I think a similar vein. So my next story is with H&R Block. So I'm not familiar. I think this is on they're only in the US, I believe. I haven't seen them in the UK. But what's really interesting is that they've entered Roblox, and I think it's very similar actually to sport. It's very important for these types of brands to be able to, financial brands, to be able to reach young audiences earlier on, because I think, once you've selected your financial business from you very rarely change it. So it's really strategic for them to be there. And the way that they've launched is by integrating into really 2 popular experiences. So one is Mega Mansion Tycoon, 1.16 billion visits, and the other one is Club Roblox, 2.65 billion. So massive experiences. And again, what they've done was the objective was like education. So it was less about, oh, let me create my own environment and, assume that people would want to engage with them immediately. What they've done is actually look at who are the audiences that we want to target and who are the experiences that matches that audience, and let's do something interesting here. And the objective was, as we know, there's a lot of younger adults that are, generating revenue on the platform. So for them, it was about more like edutainment and telling them about finances, but also taxes and how to do their tax properly. So it also reminded me a bit of like what Duolingo, obviously in a completely different way. But I'm really loving how those entities are coming into the platform to be able just to educate community that I think needs to be upskill on those topics. I wish I had that at school. I've never been taught to do taxes when I was at school. And I think it's such a shame and such a miss from at least on our side in France, like we don't have that like financial education. And I'm so glad that, entities are like in like H&R are actually doing this. And I think that's a really important topic to discuss and a great platform for them to do so.
Yeah, we don't have financial literacy here in the States as far as in school being taught, which is such a bummer and such a miss. So it's cool when you see stuff like this. But also, I just love this article just because it's really shedding light on these sort of industries that you wouldn't necessarily, equate to gaming. They're leveraging gaming to reach younger generations, and they're making that impact. It just shows that like all verticals can benefit from activating inside these spaces.
Absolutely. It really is just about your message, like why you're showing up and what is the objective, and does that actually make sense for the audience that you're reaching? And I think they were like really spot on with what they've done.
My next story is from Variety, and the title was "Why Hollywood is Still Struggling to Make the Most of Video Games."
Interesting.
Yeah, it took an interesting look, and I think we'll start by just throwing back to what Pete said from Wavemaker last week, basically saying the highest grossing entertainment out there today is gaming, and it's a much larger percent of the market share than Hollywood. So it begs the question, like, what is Hollywood to do? What direction are we moving in? And, if you're a Hollywood studio and you have IP, there's basically three ways you can approach or get into gaming. The first being traditional licensing, which is the oldest and the thing that's most familiar. It's like James Bond.
007.
Yeah. It's like, okay, here's James Bond. Here's the IP. I'll hand it to a game studio. You go make it. And then I'll look at it and approve. And then the second is to build your own AAA game, like acquire a studio and, kind of try to build it yourself.
Yeah.
And then the third way is to activate in a low lift way on these UGC gaming platforms like Roblox and Fortnite. So, the question is like, well, what should they do? And, there was recent news that Warner Brothers is shutting down 3 studios that they had, 3 of the gaming studios. Disney, they mainly license all their stuff. They don't build it themselves. And then Netflix is interesting because they, had big visions for gaming. And I think there was a lot of AAA talk in the early days. Now it's kind of shifting more to mobile and low lift.
Yeah.
And then you've got Sony, who's probably had the most success out of all those studios. But it also goes on to talk about how adapting IP can work really well, although we haven't seen a ton of it. But some great examples there is obviously The Last of Us, which is essentially it's taking a video game and then Hollywood coming in and saying, well, why don't we make this into a film or into a TV series? And obviously HBO crushed that. It's fantastic. Go watch The Last of Us if you haven't seen it. Season 2 coming. Also Fallout. Fallout was sick too. I don't know if you saw that on Amazon.
So I didn't play the game initially, so I didn't have the appetite to like watch the series, but I know it went down so well and like community was really happy. But The Last of Us definitely played the game, loved the series. I can't wait for the second one.
Fallout also just very well done, well executed. And then the article goes on just to talk about like this concept of immersive storytelling. Where is Hollywood going? And I think it points out the fact that it's traditionally looked at as 2 different worlds, right? It's like you've got the Hollywood studios over here that make the films. You got the game groups over here that make the games. And oftentimes the creative directors on the studio side are not joining with those game teams. Hopefully we can see more of that in the future. And Hollywood should be leaning in, trying to make more immersive storytelling. You know,
Agreed.
maybe not leaning into it becoming a straight up game, but, you know, leveraging this new technology to experiment and create new experiences that are gamified, immersive, that aren't just...
I agree, and I think that's where Unreal Engine is kind of heading, right? Like I think the update as well just showed how powerful their engine is, and is really blurring what you can do inside the film, and then like repurpose those assets to become your AAA game. So if anything, I think Epic and Unreal Engine are probably like at the forefront of that blurred line, because they have an engine that can really be appropriate for both. I agree with you where I feel like a lot of film directors are not, you know, looking at gaming, but at the end of the day, games, like the best games it's the story and it's the storyline. So they really do have very similar skills. They just maybe haven't looked at each other that much.
I mean, the way I think they should be thinking about it is like large, deep franchise concepting. You know, it's like thinking about it as a Star Wars from day one, which is like, this is a great story, right?
Exactly.
We're going to make a movie. We might make a TV show. We're going to make a game. And
Absolutely.
I think to your point with Unreal, which is so interesting, is you can build those assets in high fidelity and then repurpose them in all the things I just mentioned.
Exactly. You don't need to do it twice. And I think it's a very like smart, cost-effective way of creating your film and already your movie. And I think to your point on what's happening with Netflix, there's really two things here. Is like either you really go long, really complex storyline, and this is when you go like AAA game, and it is really cost effective, but you really need to think about like exactly to what you were saying, like the transmedia strategy on like what are we going to do beyond that commercial? Like how do we get people entertained for a long period of time? Because otherwise it's a lot of money for a very short cycle of your product, which is the gameplay, or like just watching the series. Then what Netflix is doing is creating those hidden game, a bit like what you have on Roblox and other games, which are bites of content, the same way as like you used to have very long format on Netflix for content. This is just a very like the small bite of the IP, but while I'm in the bus. So I think that's what they're doing, is like, how do they make sure that people are always on the platform of Netflix while their second season is not here? I think I really like align with their direction here, because it's less about creating really big AAA. I think there's better players in the game that can do that. It's more for them, how do they make sure that people don't like remove their subscription once their, you know, series is done, and they find something else to buy into a little bit while the second season is coming out.
Exactly. And also Hollywood just giving that mind shift to be like, okay, we're building IP and it's going to be interactive. It's not just top down. So we will be kind of developing that from day one, from ideation. And I think we're going to see a ton more of that in the coming years. So speaking of immersive storytelling, today we're going to be doing our real-time review of the game Kasama, The Awakening. And this is on the Spatial platform. Pretty fantastic game. Read a lot of reviews. I haven't quite played it yet, but this comes to us from the gaming studio, and I'm going to butcher this name, unfortunately. But I think it's Pigami Kasama Games. Does that sound right?
Pigama? I thought
Pigama? Yeah, maybe it's Pigama.
Kasama Games.
I apologize if I did not pronounce that correctly, but you know, here's an example of a game that has ultra high fidelity. It's really immersive storytelling, but I think we should jump in and kind of review it in real time, and you guys can hear from us on what we think.
Yep, let's go to the next session, real-time review.
Real-time review. Okay, Kasama.
All right, we're in. I mean, okay, so first of all, I think I want to acknowledge how gorgeous the character is. This is the first time that you're seeing it, so I'm really excited to hear what you're thinking. Like, what do you think?
Well, right off the bat, I'm sort of blown away by the graphics and the fidelity.
Right?
It looks fantastic, especially being on a web browser.
It's such a cute little character, and it's definitely, so it is a linear story and I think for those that knew about Spatial before, they used to be like doing a lot more like hidden game, I would say, or a little bit more like Roblox. And for me, this was, at least to my knowledge, this was the very first like very popular game that was a linear story where you are essentially guided through a storyline and interacting with different objects. There is also a very beautiful, I don't know what you're thinking, but I love those like contrast of lightings in games. So it's all like moonlight, but there's also like those beautiful like lanterns lights that are like dotted around the game. So it really creates a very peaceful and beautiful atmosphere.
It's like a dream. It's very
That's
beautiful.
Right. Yeah, that is right. So what's really interesting about the studio is that because they were so, I think, innovative with the way that they pushed the envelope of the platform. So Spatial, I think we've mentioned it, is, if we haven't, this is a platform that is built on the Unity engine. So this is why the graphic can be really pushed here. And they are, to my knowledge, the first one that have really leveraged to the max the engine, and this is why they've collaborated with Walmart on their spatial activation that they've just released, because Walmart was able to identify them as like a creator that really understood the platform and was able to really create something really beautiful and new. And I think they've really done that with what they've done with Walmart.
Yeah, absolutely. Also with this, it also feels very innovative and new. And it's like, this is the first time I played a spatial game where I felt like it was very unique, because a lot of the games that I played in the past have all kind of felt very similar. But as far as like game types and pushing the envelope on art fidelity and immersion, like this game definitely checks that box. I want to check out this dream world. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty dope to me.
Are you by the bonfire?
I'm going.
Oh,
Rest by the bonfire under the tree.
So I'm there. Haha, so I've beat you.
Yeah, well, you totally did. Okay. What language is this guy speaking?
You're in a good. Don't worry. Oh, I've managed it. I'm in the dream world.
Oh, I'm going to the dream world right now. This is a animated cutscene.
I've done chapter 2 before you.
Chapter 2. Paralysis. This is not good. I could definitely recommend people check this game out. It's beautiful and creative and immersive. No barrier to entry, and it's really easy to pick up the gameplay. It's very intuitive and creative and immersive. I could see like non-gamers, following this and like getting immersed in it. Which is amazing.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's jump back to the episode. See you there. Wow. That game is beautiful, right?
It was unbelievable. So I really can't wait for us to speak to our guest today, Gianna Valintina. I think she will have so much of intel on the platform, the future of that platform. I really can't wait to deep dive with her on like what are the capabilities and how Brian should really look into it.
Yeah, let's go chat with her. Gianna, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's so great to see you both, by the way. Like, incredible strategist, incredible creator, powerhouse team.
We're so happy to have you here. Really excited about all of the topics that we'll deep dive into today.
It'd be great. And Gianna, I just want to say our background, how, we worked on a Tommy Hilfiger activation on Spatial a few years back for Metaverse Fashion Week, I believe. And it was great working with you and your team. But I kind of want to start with your background. Can you tell us a little bit about like how you got into the space and, kind of what led you to Spatial eventually?
Oh, yeah. It's so interesting because there's so many of us in the gaming space now that work with brands. And I think we come from these unconventional paths, right? It's funny to talk to different stakeholders in the industry and you're like, how did you get here? But I spent about a decade as an experiential producer. So I kicked off my career in really building large. If you met me even a decade ago, I was a totally different Gia. You'd see me with a harness. I was climbing truss like 40, 60 feet in the air. I was designing like lighting rigs and stage design. So my former clients are like iHeartRadio. I got to work with Nike. I spent a couple of years with the NFL and touring and such. And so, when you have that background, you kind of grow up in brand and how do you actualize a brand? But I also grew up in 3D because, back then, we were working in like CAD and Rhino, and you have to visualize this 3D immersive space that real people are within.
For the viewers and listeners who aren't familiar with the platform, can you kind of talk high level, what is Spatial? What can you do there? What are the pros?
Yeah, Spatial is at the heart of it, a 3D interactive platform infrastructure. So we provide the necessary infrastructure to deploy interactive media. And when I say interactive, that can be gamified, that can be educational, that could be virtual social worlds, but we do everything from the multiplayer aspect of it, voice, audio, text, hosting, and then, consolidating your entire ecosystem of virtual properties all in one platform. And so really we launch and deploy for a developer or a brand across web, mobile, and VR, making that entire pipeline extremely accessible, but also easy to deploy your own white label or original IPs right off the platform.
Yeah, and one thing I would just echo there is like you don't need an account to access it. So like your user base can just be literally somebody that gets a link, clicks it on their phone or their computer, and you just inside the browser go straight into an experience.
Yeah, I was really enamored by Spatial when I first met it. Spatial has been around for over 10 years. People are like, how did you get the name Spatial? And it's like, well, actually, we pioneered spatial collaboration almost a decade ago. And we started in AR. So we were the first platform to have collaboration between multiplayer collaboration in AR. And then we realized really quickly, even though we were pioneering on that side, even now the hardware wasn't there. We started on the hub. So we thought, well, how do we make that interactivity accessible? And so we then moved to the web client that we have. Okay, let's deploy on web, and then we were like, well, let's deploy on mobile. And then also we should do this on VR as well. And so we built this incredible framework where you can deploy these very accessible interactive activations quickly in a click. But to your point, it's also about people accessing them, right? So, Spatial really lives in its own lane. We launched our gaming vertical about a year ago, but we've always lived in enterprise. So for a long time, we've been solving businesses' problems for a very long time. So Spatial is like a platform and an agency combined.
Interesting. I didn't realize that the platform existing more on an enterprise level for over 10 years, and it's only was it a year ago that you opened it to then more of a like UGC creators and game developers?
So this is thank you for saying that. It's such a beautiful story to us. It's very heartwarming, especially when we think about when we see something like Unlimited come up. So we launched, we were using it for enterprises for years, and that's where the bulk of our clients were. And then our two founders, they are leaders in 3D. So one of our founders created the first 3D AR interface where you can manipulate data. And then our other founder, Anand, he launched the first desktop where you can move data around, and he sold that to Google. And he was on the founding team of Google Images and Google Android. So they have been invested in interactivity, really for a decade. And so it was kind of like a walled garden at first. We had these wonderful enterprises that were testing and learning and moving it into their business operations. But they, really saw a greater vision for the industry, and they decided, we want to open this to all developers. So in 2021, people were talking about metaverse, and we were like, finally, people want to build in 3D. That's so exciting. And then we opened that, and people were launching and deploying our collaborative tools. But very quickly, we realized when you're in the public space, there's a higher demand for interactivity. It's not just about speaking and talking and walking through a beautiful world. We were able to really track that user behavior, and me as an experiential producer was studying every movement of what makes people show up, what makes that more retentive. And that's when we decided, okay, actually our creators are demanding more interactivity. So that shows us the developers are pushing creativity even further. And so when we launched a gaming vertical, it was through Unity, where we're like, well, now you can build and deploy games. And developers just started showing up, really building incredible spaces. And we also realized, people don't realize what you can build with the platform unless we build too. So we put our shoes on and started building as independent developers. We launched about 40 new titles in a year. We had 32 million players coming into public, gaming spaces, which was really exciting. And we said, okay, well, when we give people something to do, that's really exciting. And also we can inspire developers and also businesses, showing the outputs that we create. Then we got to a point where we're like, well, what is our lane, especially in the gamified media space? And what can we do with our features? And how can we show people how far you can push these features? And thankfully, that's when we got great partners like our brands and Walmart coming on board.
I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about that, creator economy that you have, so that made of developers, and maybe bundling it with another question that I was thinking on. I think we've seen really different experiences and different type of immersion happening on Spatial. And I wonder if over the years, if you've seen a different trends, I guess, on the type of, genre that people are building, but also engaging with a little bit more. Different trends that maybe you're seeing on Spatial. Like we're seeing a lot of brands doing partnership with existing developers that are in this platform to come up more authentically. And that's what Walmart has done as well. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about that creator community that you have at Spatial and maybe how it is different to any other maybe UGC platform that other brands might be more familiar with, like Fortnite and Roblox.
Yeah, well, I think those ecosystems started as games, primarily games. Spatial is 18 plus. And so the people who come and build on Spatial are very entrepreneurial. Our community is very much developer based, and they have a dream for the future of XR and the future of 3D. So, our community, you find there are a lot of educators on the platform. There are a lot of community ambassadors who want to teach other communities how to use these tools and use them for businesses. So, it's really important to realize when you come to the Spatial community, at least when we think of the community that's using our tool set and deploying using Spatial, they are a very mature audience. I mean, our audience is everything from 18 to 65, and it's incredible because it's so accessible. You also get, it's easy for consumers to come in and just learn how to use Spatial very quickly. But also when we start to think of the business side, it also makes it easier when, I'm just using my laptop. I'm just on my phone, and I can deploy and I can play in this very, very easily. So I really give a lot of credit because when brands come to us, it doesn't take me a lot of work to find great developer talent because we've been able to mentor developers in our community with our engineers and our strategists and help them grow into full-blown studios. So you can work on Spatial and build. You can bring your own developer, or you can look within our own community and find some of the best creatives that are just looking for a shot, but are incredible storytellers, incredible builders, and they're experts at Unity. And because we find people at, all different stages, we also find these incredible gems that we're able to mentor up.
That's awesome. I love that. Let's talk a little bit about branded experiences. Like what brands have activated on the platform in the past and what type of experiences did they build?
So, man, I get so excited about brands and I've been working with them for a while. I think when people look at something like Walmart Unlimited, it's so incredible, but we also learned so much with our brand partners in the past. And each activation was a new piece of learning for us on how brands can show up in the future. And we always wanted to get to that nirvana of, well, what is brand storytelling in the context of gaming? And so, we've had brands like Vogue, and that taught us so much. We were like, whoa, okay, fashion customers will show up and spend time, especially if they have some sort of activity or a perk to unlock. We had Hugo Boss do their spring-summer activation, which was beautiful. And we also sold out of that collection within the first week. So we also learned about commerce in that activation to say, okay, so you can have an independent activation. And we know that customers want to click out and buy when we give them something interesting and interactive. It can feel intimidating when you think of your own IP. Right? You're building your own IP. It's your own property. You're not trying to retrofit into the trends or styles of maybe an existing gaming platform. You really have a chance to be independent and say, well, what story do I want to bring to my customers? How does my brand exist when I can build my own gaming story? And so we were always trying to get to this nirvana with our brands of, I knew, especially as a producer, I was like, one day I just want to go into a game and I want to unlock the new Nike sneaker at the end of it, right? And I want to buy it on the spot, or I want to play the L'Oreal universe and I want to get a promo code, for that lipstick, and I want to buy that. And thankfully, after all of those wonderful brand activations where we learned so much, then we could, come to someone like Walmart who has a vision for this space and introduce, hey, this is where we think the future a brand gaming could be. And this is what our platform is capable of. And, it was just really harmonious working with Walmart.
So I think you just outlined the reasons why brands should be in the space and thinking about it. But I'm curious about that barrier to entry, because on a lot of marketing teams, they don't have a gaming background, and they might, listen to what we're saying here and say, oh, it would be great. I would love for my brand to show up here. But then the next question is like, well, how do I do that? I'm not a developer. I don't know developers. How should they be thinking about actually activating?
I worked in shopper marketing for a long time. And before you ever deploy a product or you start to go forward with your campaign, there's a lot of data and science that is behind it. What I find in the gaming space, and I laugh about it with my team sometimes, because a brand will come to us and say, I want to make a game for gamers. And that's such a broad statement, especially when 3 billion people are playing games. It almost feels like that meme where they're like, I want to make a game for gamers. I'm like, really? And it's like, I actually want to sell my product to Gen Z, females. We're like, okay, we can start here now. Let's get to your actual problem that you're trying to solve. And so I think when brands show up in the space, they do so much work in their everyday campaigns. And they also think that they can build a space on an ecosystem. But really what they're looking for is to build consumer loyalty. They're trying to sell their products. They're trying to have quantifiable ROI on why they're investing in this gaming space. So I do believe that, the actions that they would take in building a brand campaign and thinking of the consumer and the demographics and their interests and their likes and the region, all of those things play a part when you're actually building a game, or it could be.
I think we have one last question before we wrap up. It almost aligns a little bit with what you've said, but I think people that are listening to this podcast and now following us at the moment, they're marketers, they're brands that are, thinking about the space. They might have already done something. And I feel like every day there's always a new platform, a new trends. And I think where maybe all three of us know the power of these platforms and how immersive it can be, I'm curious to see how would integrate spatial as part of a brand 360 strategy, and where you think in the future how those type of immersive channels are going to have an impact on a brand overall marketing plan.
Well, I think we're in a really important time right now. One, I just want to give a lot of respect to the thought leaders, the marketers, the brands, the platforms that have been pushing this medium and creating this environment for consumers to show up. I mean, I think every single platform that does this and experiments, this is the time to do it, right? Every brand that goes out there, there's always a win because of the learning that you take back in the activation. There's no failure here. I truly believe that, because you look at Walmart, and I have so much respect for Justin, and there's such a very interesting brand. And here's what I think, and I'm not speaking for Walmart, but here's what I think in just being in brand for 20 odd years, right? I think the end goal is we want, if you're a brand and showing up in a gaming space, you ultimately want your customer to buy your product, right? And we can do things like native commerce, right? But to move this forward, you have to start having audiences familiar with these consumer activations. This is why I think we need to do best in class all the time. We need to push the art forward. We need to start delivering incredible content to gamers, because if the end goal is I quantify success by you buying my product or being familiar with my product or raising your positive reactions to my brand, then we have to be excellent. And we have to oversaturate of it, right? We have to go to different platforms, because more and more audiences will say, I am used to seeing brands here, and now I am used to shopping these experiences. So what Walmart's doing in terms of building this native commerce is there is going to be a point, I believe, just my hypothesis, where you won't think twice about buying a product from Walmart in a game. You know why? Because they showed up over and over and over again. And when we deliver titles like Unlimited, which feel high fidelity and accessible, and we can get it out to that Gen Z and millennial audience, now it says, oh, I'm also, we raise the bar, right? I'm also used to buying products in more of a AAA kind of game. or an RPG game. So every time you move that forward, you start to create that familiarity with the consumer of course, I buy this product in the game. And so showing up on different platforms is really, really powerful. But I do think, at least when you show up on Spatial, you're starting to move audiences to become familiar with buying your product in more robust, advanced storytelling games, which means you're telling deeper narratives, and now you're bringing commerce right into your game. And they might not be surprised anymore about shopping with you in a digital interactive.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I think in general, it's this e-com behavior inside of gaming is a learned activity. It's not inherent or expected at this time because people are coming to games to play games. And sometimes when they see like, oh, buy now, it's kind of like, oh, I didn't come here to shop, but they're like, oh, I do actually like this item. I might want to get it. Cool. But to your point, if they see that enough times and the brands are integrated in the games they're playing more consistently, you can see like years down the road where it's like, why would I go somewhere else to make my purchase? Because I could just do it right here. And I'm already spending my time here.
I think I really resonated with what you said is it's, people are going to start discovering brands as well within those spaces. And it's something that I haven't thought about. And you've kind of unlocked a new thought, which is, those brands are obviously tapping into an audience that, they are consumers of there or new consumers of there, but they're already seeding the way of how new consumers are going to discover this product in the future. So while, we're still at the very start of direct response in those virtual spaces, we like have to get comfortable with the idea that this is how brands might get discovered, or in general, people are going to purchase product in the future. So it is a time for brands to really learn as much as possible and have the right frameworks so that when it's completely, the norm, they already have the teams and the learnings that are invaluable if you had to be playing catch up when this thing just becomes the norm. So a really interesting point that you've raised here for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, consumers right now are adults, and I love when we start to work with younger generations because they're already familiar with gaming, and we can help them adopt these practices early. But then also when we think of adult consumers now, they are playing games. Pretty much the majority of adults are interacting with this media. So to me, we have to keep breaking new ground. We have to keep pushing the art. We have to start bringing, the consumers into the stories with our brands. And to us in Spatial, that's the lane that we fit in, right? How can we go direct to your customers and deliver native commerce through original stories where your consumers feel like a hero being part of your brand? And to us, that sort of cinema, gamified cinema, we're hoping to bring, to audiences and also brand storytelling.
Well said. That was fantastic. We really appreciate you coming on the show, and congrats again on the recent activations. I think that Spatial is definitely a platform to watch, and I would encourage all of our listeners to jump in and check it out because as we spoke about on the show, it's really come a long way in the last year about the type of games that are showing up, the level of art fidelity. There's a lot of immersive stuff there, so we would definitely recommend you check it out. And Gianna, thanks again, and let's go back to our show.
What's your takeaway from this, and what were your key favorite points that we've touched upon in this interview?
The first shocking thing is that this is not the Spatial that I remember. So as far as what you can do there is way more vast than I thought, and I think that opens up a lot of opportunities. Also, I think removing that barrier to entry is massive, and I'm just excited to see what brands, but also with developers and creatives in general, how they activate within this platform and what they choose to do from a storytelling standpoint.
I fully agree with you. I think we saw it with the game. I think this type of storyline, the type of design that you can have is really incredible. We know this is a smaller community, so it's nothing compared to a Minecraft or Fortnite, but really the opportunity for brands here is that they have the space to really explore the storyline that they want to say around their brand. Where I think when you go into Fortnite or Roblox, they are really mature platforms. So the culture, the way that you have to engage is kind of already determined a little bit, where here you have really the opportunity to shape the way that you want to tell your story. And I think this is why I got so excited when I saw Walmart and what they've done, is that if they tried to replicate that storyline on Roblox or on Fortnite, I don't know if it would have landed the same way, because a linear story like that is not something that we see in other platforms. And really, that's the opportunity with Spatial, is that if you have a story that's like so complex and has a lot of like character building, this is something that you can do on Spatial. The culture is still being shaped. So there is, excitement from them just to try something new. And I think that's the opportunity here, is that users of Spatial are avid to see something new on there. And I think that's really the opportunity. And for developer is like the ability to test different crafts, different types of gameplay. So I agree with you. And I think that's really how brands should look into this, is like you have the opportunity here to really build something that's easy to approach, because you don't need to download anything, but also a lot more flexibility in like the storyline that you want to say.
Respect. Yeah. And let's jump to what's played out this week.
I think we've all been in journeys with taxi drivers where they are adamant that they don't want to use a like navigator, like Waze, for example, and they would ask you for like, what journey you want to take. And I think I'm not a big driver. I don't know, like, especially when I'm like traveling abroad, I have no idea, but please take me to my destination the quickest. So if there is an accident and it's been reported and the ways that exist, please just listen to it. So that would be my played out. And thank you so much, Nick, for finding me another little element to mention today. What is yours?
Yeah, well, I agree. And it's like a taxi driver, don't ask me if we should take the bridge or the other thing, because it's like, I don't even know. I have no idea. So please just rely on technology. Don't always do that. But in this scenario, the technology is going to help you out. So
yeah, absolutely.
Agree with you there. My played out for this week is just about solicitation in general. Like, it's getting out of control for me. There's like constant texts coming through. There's constant voicemails. Yeah, there's constant like emails. There's constant LinkedIn messages, and it's just so irrelevant to my life. It's asking me about things that I don't want, and it's draining. And I'm over it. And now with the introduction of AI, all this stuff can be automated. All the follow-up comms can be automated. God. And it can be customized, which I don't like, which is like, hey, Nick, I have this for you, or I noticed you did this thing. And it's like, please stop. I'm tired. I just so much to get through.
You would think that with AI that they would actually be able to make their message relevant.
Well, they can make it relevant, but you can see right through it.
Okay.
Like I got to cut through a lot of fat, because there's a lot of comms, a lot of information being, dumped on me every single day. And the only thing I respond to is like real authentic connection. When somebody says, hey, I know who you are. I have something that I think you should see. And here's why you should see it. Would you be willing to talk to me? Then it's like, okay, I'm in. But if you can't be on that level, I just have to screen it out, and AI can't authentically do that yet.
I get that. I think it's going to be a massive issue, and I think more like even more personalization, and I think less automation is probably what's going to get you a meeting. I think if you are in the sales or partnership side, I think that's what's going to win.
Yeah, 100%. And just straight up, just fall back. Just go easy. Everyone's got to process a lot of stuff in their lives. Like, just less is more here, guys. Awesome. Well, hey, I think that is our show for the day, for the week.
It is.
Amazing opportunity to chat with Gianna and check out Spatial. And we're really excited about next week, because we're going to have Justin Breton from Walmart. He's the brand experience and strategic partnership executive, and he's going to be discussing his concept of adaptive retail. And he'll break that down and what that means across all the different UGC game platforms that Walmart's activated on.
Yeah, I'm really excited to deep dive into it. So thank you again so much to Gianna from Spatial for coming on today's episode. Thanks to all the listeners as well for tuning in, and please subscribe, leave a review, and join the conversation with #BrandsInPlay.
That was Brands in Play. Thank you for joining the podcast where we explore immersive marketing and the people who are leading it. Co-hosted by Albane, Prioux, and Nick Hill. Our show today was produced by myself, Edward Regu, with creative direction by Joey Jeddah and Javed Kazmi, and audio engineering by Somran Kiyo. Special thanks to Kristen James Olszewski. Be sure to join us every week for brand new episodes.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views, policies, or positions of host employers. The information shared during this podcast is based on personal experience and publicly available information and is intended for informational purposes only. Any references to specific platforms, companies, or partnerships are made in a personal capacity and do not imply endorsement, partnership, or official association with any organization mentioned.